So, welcome everybody. This is a video blog post from the Center for Practice Management blog. And today I am talking to Connor Egan, and Connor is with 10X Consulting, and they're a cybersecurity consulting firm out of Charlotte. And he and I were talking. He reached out to me after he read a blog post and was interested in some kind of more sophisticated cybersecurity techniques. So I said, let's talk, and we'll talk for the benefit of everybody watching. So Connor, I have a couple of questions for you. First, what are three things that a law firm can do to start immediately getting a better security position?
Sure, Catherine, and thanks for having me on. Three things right off the bat that a firm can do immediately at really little to no cost would be multi-factor authentication. So that can be done across platforms, just clicking on your settings and then going into the security portion of it. Of course, we have passwords for everything. So the second part is getting a good password manager and implementing that, across all of your platforms as well. And the third thing I'd say would be backups. So make sure you've got good backups for all of your information. But we really need to go a step further, and we need to copy those backups onto an additional storage site that's not connected. It'll be a central theme through our conversation here, but if we can have it being segmented, that is the information that's backed up on our systems to a different location, be it in the cloud or on site physically, then it's all the better for worst case scenario.
Excellent. Yeah, I use a belt, suspenders, and safety pin approach. They call it the 3-2-1 backup method, and
Right.
that's the way I try to describe it. But yeah,
It's
something replicated not just once, but twice in different locations and all that kind of stuff. And I'll post some articles that I have about backup along with this for extra links. And if you have anything, you'll send it my way.
of course.
But there's aside the multi-factor authentication and the password managers and good backup, all of those are nothing to be dismissed. But there's some more sophisticated techniques that a firm can use to add more security to their networks. Can you explain the concept of something that I hear a lot about, the zero knowledge architecture?
Sure. So as we go beyond a few employees and we start getting into more sophisticated environments where there's controls and segmentation across networks, and there's a lot more branching, we get into things like zero trust and zero knowledge. So zero knowledge is a way to vault passwords locally on your machine in a way that's encrypted and really only allows the individual, the local user, access to that, so that if someone does get into the machine, they just have access to the passwords locally on that machine, and they can't get to the cache, which is oftentimes associated with directories like Active Directory and other systems management stuff. So it just kind of segments the damage in that area. And this is a design by concept, right? So when we're looking at designing our networks, we would design it in a zero knowledge way so that there's that segmentation. I hope I didn't get too technical there.
No, and so basically it's like if somebody gets hacked, somebody can't the hacker can't back end into the system through that user. Is that the
Yeah,
concept?
that's exactly right. I mean, we're all now hopefully familiar with caches. So it's an ability for some of these platforms to store information so we can just immediately sign in. We still have that capability, but there's not as much access to the main repository of cache data, if that makes sense.
Okay. And then another thing that I hear about is pen testing or penetration testing. Can you explain what that is and what firms' technical environments are the best candidates for pen testing?
Sure, it's a great question. Penetration testing or purple team or red team exercises are kind of fancy ways to say that, hey, we're going to have someone that's going to try and hack into the system in a safe manner. We're really kind of seeing that as the first line of defense, the first thing we should be doing, really across all different types of IT networks, firm networks. Uh, there's a lot of different tools. There's no one silver bullet. We can lock down the windows and close the doors as much as we can. We can layer as much. But until we have someone go in and try and see what they can do, how they can get in, number one, and number two, how far they can go and what damage they can go, number two, if we do things that way, we really find that we can better protect ourselves, better architect our systems against those kind of threats. So to answer your question, it's really the small firms can do it with just a guy at an hourly rate, at a small rate. And it's like, okay, here's how we got in. Here's what we were able to do. And this is what you should be doing about it. To much more large firms where we go through Internet of Things devices and we go through sophisticated network hacks and then software vulnerabilities, and the list goes on and on. But in a nutshell, it's just a good hacker.
Mhm. Uh, But a white hat hacker, somebody
Yeah,
that you're paying to find out the
yeah, exactly.
vulnerabilities. It's better for you to do it than someone else to do it.
Right, right. And when we think of things from the hacker's perspective, we can get a much better picture of what they can do.
Mhm. So there's and in the world of security, it's ever changing. It's kind of a race to keep up with the bad guys. And I say keep up because they're often a step ahead. So it's not something that you get to set it and forget it. And so one of the things, another kind of newer security protocol that I've been hearing a good bit about is this FIDO standard and the passwordless access. Can you kind of explain what that's about?
Sure. And so it's awesome that you've been hearing about it because that's kind of the cutting edge of our technology when it comes to getting into systems and having employees access things in a productive manner. So the fast identity online is what the FIDO stands for. That's a passwordless access protocol. So it matches our zero knowledge architecture. So architecture is the way we design systems. And then the passwordless access FIDO stuff is how we use those systems. So that's going to be using kind of similar to 2FA and MFA, where we use encryption keys to access things, but it goes a step further with biometrics and like face scans and fingerprints and other types of information like that, where you don't have to type in a password as much. You've got your keys and you've got your biometric access that's stored in the same way, but it's just a little bit more secure. And we're talking more federal government like standards when we come up across those kind of things. We're really, really sensitive infrastructure data.
And I know that the iOS 16 now has the FIDO standard applied for the new iPhone operating system, but we're also seeing Microsoft pushing this out, Google pushing this out, and so with the biometrics, I think we're all thinking biometrics was to unlock a hardware device, and I think this is going next step to unlocking software.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and you're seeing it on some software packages that you can put on your phone, for example. Like you mentioned, it was originally designed for the mobile device networks. So now we're transitioning to some of the software, not just face scan to get into my phone, but also face scan to get into some of my applications. So you're exactly right
Interesting. So it's a brave new world.
there.
Um, and finally, I hear, it's said people are the weakest link in your firm's security. So, how can a firm effectively train staff to recognize and avoid phishing and hacking?
Oh, yeah, sure. This is a great question, Catherine, because while we talked a lot today about how to protect yourself in simple, secure ways that we can, prevent people from getting in, but also prevent them from doing damage once they get in, our first line of defense is knowledge. And knowledge is, of course, power. So credit to the North Carolina Bar Association for including technology credits as part of their CLEs. So I'm sure if you go on their website and take some of those CLEs, there will be some information about how to look out for these types of social engineering attacks. Um, and that's what they are. They're playing on human emotions, playing on our human behavior to get information from us that they can log in kind of not legally, but more traditional manner. So the best example is a phishing email where it's like, your bank account has been logged in this way, and you react quickly and you click on the link. So more time that we can spend as a firm educating our employees, heck, 1 hour a month, that type of exposure can just make you leaps and bounds above others and protect the firm really in a low cost way. Further, they've got some simulated phishing programs that you can implement and other things of that nature if you wanted to get more sophisticated with it. Of course, the CISA, the government website regarding cybersecurity infrastructure, has a lot of resources as well. And I'm sure you do too, Catherine. So just time and effort, really, when it comes to preparing yourself.
Yeah, I think it's kind of constantly reminding people, and especially right now around the holidays when people are shopping online. I know that Black Friday turned into Cyber Friday, and Cyber Monday is cyber for the rest of the month and into December. So, you know, there's already scams perpetrated trying to get people to do personal things. And one thing I try to remind people is that if you have a good email policy wherein you tell your staff and the attorneys not to use their firm email for personal stuff, for shopping online and things like that, you're less likely to expose the firm's network to personal attacks. Because if you're using your firm email address as your login for Amazon, then if you get an email that says, you know, your Amazon account's been, you know, hacked or whatever, and you panic and you go and log in, guess what? It was probably a scam. You fell for it, and now you've actually put your firm's data at risk because of it. So having good email policies, I think, around how people are allowed to use firm email addresses and firms' IT and managed services and all that kind of stuff, I think is another way to get people to be aware. I like the SANS Institute Ouch newsletter. It comes out monthly, and they just kind of do a deep dive into a particular exploit. So we've got phishing, of course, but now we've also got smishing, the SMS phishing, where you get a text message from someone, and then there's vishing, the voicemail phishing. All of this is the same variation on a theme in terms of social engineering, but we just have to be more aware and more careful than ever before, I think.
No, you're exactly right. And then we go even by extension to the scams that are out there, impersonation in particular. Hey, it's Connor Egan, uh, managing partner at this firm, asking one of the accounting individuals for information or to go out and get gift cards or things like that. So we see it in all forms. One quick tip that I'm sure a lot of people can find and use immediately is if you do think there's a suspicious email or link, first off, send it to the IT folks if you've got them. But if you don't have them, hover over the link and that will show you the address of where it's going. Of course, we can all rename hyperlinks to be whatever we want and look like whatever we want. But if you do hover over it, it will send you or tell you the exact location of where you're going to, the exact hypertext markup language link. So that's a quick tip one can use as well.
And not to keep you much past this, but one of the I give that same sort of advice as well and completely agree with it. But one twist is when I'm looking at my phone, I can't mouse over a link in an email.
Right. Exactly. So in that case, it's best to pick up the phone and call that individual who's ever sending you that information. If you are suspicious at all, pick up the phone and call them and be like, "Hey, it's Connor. Catherine, did you send me this link?" And that's a good way to verify it as well.
The exploits may or may not be designed to get into your phone and do damage the way it would do into your Windows computer or your Mac and get into the network, but we don't want to find out the hard way, right?
Right, right. It is more advanced when it comes to the malware that's deployed on phones, and that's not the majority as of yet, but it is quickly turning.
Yep.
So you're exactly right.
Yep. So everybody be security aware and safe out there. Connor, thank you so much for going into descriptions of some of these newer ways to protect the firm.
Sure.
Um, and, hopefully we'll look forward to talking to you at some length later.
Thanks for having me on, Catherine.